All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome once again to M2 Technologies Manufacturing Power Hour. Today's Power Hour will focus on license management tips and will be run by Dawn Warner. My name is Jasenia. I am the event coordinator here at M2 Technologies. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Just want to start off first by saying I am working from home, as probably most of you are as well. So I apologize if there is any kind of background noise that interferes with the webinar. I'll try to keep it at a minimum. But also, if you have any questions during the presentation, please make sure you're typing them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel, not in the chat panel. We'll likely answer all questions at the end of the webinar, and any questions that we aren't able to answer, we will be following up either to you directly, or we might even make a blog post or some kind of email. So stay tuned for that. Also, a recorded version of this webinar will be available on our website and YouTube channel within a couple days. You'll receive an email with a link once that's ready. And before we jump into the webinar, I just want to introduce M2 Technologies to you all. So M2 Technologies is a consulting firm focused on productivity, improving manufacturing process efficiency, and reducing manufacturing costs. Our mission is to help manufacturers design better products and increase market share by leveraging industry-leading engineering, design, process automation, and data management technologies. Using generative design and best-in-class manufacturing and asset management processes, our team of industry experts can help you become more sustainable, more profitable, and more prepared to meet the demands of urbanization in a rapidly changing world. We're committed to helping clients realize the business benefits of BIM and asset management quickly, economically by facilitating the use of innovative technologies and processes. Whether it's streamlining your product design, maximizing asset longevity, or optimizing your process, our team is one of the most experienced groups of manufacturing technology consulting professionals. We partner with world leaders such as Autodesk, Panzura, and Bluebeam to utilize innovative technologies and methodologies to empower sustainable manufacturing and overcome local challenges. Our vision is to reduce the environmental impact of urbanization by helping the manufacturing industry to design, produce, and operate better projects more efficiently. To help support the industry with these demands of urbanization, we offer a wide range of services, including BIM for manufacturing, software development, strategic planning, and much, much more. Now, Dawn Warner is going to hop on and take you through today's webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you very much for that introduction. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Dawn Warner. A little bit of background on me. I've been in the channel partner for about 10 years. Prior to that, I was at Autodesk for 13 in their product support division, mostly handling Inventor. But back in the earlier days, I was doing mechanical and electrical support. Prior to Autodesk, I had 10 years with prior channel partners doing mostly AE application work. And before that, 7 years of design experience, mostly medical device and some mechanical features there. With that said, I'd like to, move to the next slide. Today's agenda is basically what we were trying to come up with was introducing a power hour around some useful information. The leadership team came up to me, been here for about 6 months, mainly working in the M2 support and working with customers calling in and doing a lot of troubleshooting techniques. And they had asked me, you know, since you've been here, what have you been seeing? What's the most traffic that's been coming in? And it kind of came around a couple of areas, mostly licensing. I mean, we do get a lot of licensing issues coming in. I'll explain the different types and the errors that we'll see with those. Kind of get into some of the functioning changes and how the different systems or the different licensing schemes kind of work in communication. We'll also get into a little bit of the troubleshooting, licensing errors, and again, kind of branching off after that, which was the second part of the question that was asked to me. There's a lot of things, a lot of tools that Autodesk offers you, such as their account. People I talk to quite frequently, they know they've got the product, but they have no idea what's in their account or even how to access it. And some other tools along that Autodesk has, such as the virtual agent and the App Store. And towards the tail end of it, I'll also go through some Autodesk support channels that are may not be aware to you, that are pretty valuable, that I find where I get a lot of my information from looking at forum posts to see how customers are using the product. So with that said, I'll just like to get into the first part of it, which is the licensing types. The Autodesk licensing has been around for quite some time. For the first part of the years, there were mostly just standalone licensing and network licensing. It wasn't until recently before they got into the subscription licensing models. But with standalone licensing, you could have gotten, say back in 2018, a 3-year subscription to that standalone license, and Autodesk is now obligated to provide you standalone licenses for the next 3 years. During this transition, they came up with a different model. They were moving to the subscription license model. So with that, they had to maintain standalone licensing. This type of licensing is actually bound to the hard drive. There's no subscription login. There's no any type of account access you have to assign to it. The machine hard drive has that information bound to it. There are ways around changing serial numbers in there through the help menu, but most of all, it was most convenient because you could put it on a laptop and send it to anybody you want. Whoever logged into that laptop had access to the software. The next one down talks about subscription licensing and single access user. So if one user would call up and purchase a standalone product, whatever that would be, it would be Inventor or AutoCAD, the user has access to install up to 3 machines. So if you could think of work, you may have a laptop at work, you may have a tower at work, but you also may have a computer at home. They give you a lot of flexibility of installing that on 3 different systems. And that is the newer subscription license model. The communication to this type of license, you are actually going out and signing into the Autodesk servers to validate your account, and then your license is then granted. One of the questions I had with this, a lot of questions that come in were, well, do I have to sign in every time? No. What is supposed to happen is it signs you and then basically gives you 30 days. And then somewhere around that 30-day mark, it will make another attempt to communicate to the server, the Autodesk server, to validate the license. In some cases, I've had reports where users have been asked to log in every single time. I will get into that a little later in the demonstration. But what's happened is that there are multiple local licensing components that are installed on the system, and it's very possible that these do not start. One of them may not start. If one of the, I believe there's 3 that do not start, it will produce an error message. From there, a simple reboot may cure it. That is the first suggestion we usually give people about getting that up. The next one down is subscription license with multi-user access. So this is kind of the next new wave of how they could handle multiple users in a company. And you could actually go in there and assign access to John Doe for a couple weeks, and then unassign the access and assign the next access to Jane Doe for the next couple of weeks. So it's a way you could go in there and manipulate who actually had access to the software. It was very popular as far as people who are out, or people who are maybe they're a couple of weeks going out of the company. It's a way they can assign access to that person and kind of monitor your seats. The last one is network licensing. This is kind of the one that's really kind of a stickler to talk about. It is a model that's going away. Even though you do have access to still purchase network seats, Autodesk is trying to come up with a transition to named users, where the licensing scheme, this network licensing scheme, is basically going to be discontinued. But you still have the option to purchase it at a rather substantial increase. They are still supporting it, and there are some companies that I know of that are still going with this this model right now. The great thing about this is you are actually installing what we call the Autodesk Network License Manager on a server. That server then will read a license file and basically dish the license to whoever clicks the icon first. If you have 7 seats and you have 8 users, that 8th user goes to click it, they're going to get a license saying excuse me, they're not going to get a license, going to get an error saying no licenses are available. So depending on you know, what model you have, I want to touch upon these briefly and go through some of the most commonly errors that we see and kind of give you some ideas around what you can look for and you know, how you can try to correct it. So with that, I'll move on to the next slide. This is the these are the license errors for the single sign-on, multi-user access, and in some cases we actually see the bottom one with the standalone error. The top one, which is the most common one, this is where you'll get a message saying the license manager is not functioning or is improperly installed. What is happening here is one of the licensing components is either failed to start, has gotten corrupted. You might not have downloaded the latest licensing hotfix or possible service pack that might be out there, and I'll get into that area a little bit later. Same thing with the license checkout. This is a little bit different. Again, it happens with a different part of the licensing component failing. The last one down here at the bottom gives you an error code. It's a little bit different. It's an older licensing menu, but this is for standalone issues where the serial number can be changed. And once you change the serial number, the request code changes. It needs a new auth code. It gets a little messy, but there are ways through the help menu that you can change the serial number. And in cases we've had to do that. And again, this is gets a little bit more involved. We're trying to clean that up. So what I'd like to show you here is, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my task manager, which sorry, I don't have that up. Let me just do this. Apologize for that. So this is the task manager here. And what you can basically see here is these are the activation services. And if I scroll down, you kind of see all these Autodesk desktop licensing service. You've got these different licensing services up here. Now I'm connected in through a network license. So what I'm getting at is if you have any of these licensing manager errors, the easiest thing to do is come into your task manager and you can actually go into any one of these services. If you see it, go into the details and it will actually show you if it's running. If it's not running here, the easiest thing to do is reboot the system. That would be the first thing we would ask you to do. If that doesn't happen, we actually have a utility. Oh, I don't want to end a task. Let's close this out. We actually have a utility. Apologize here. Let me go ahead and get this up. We have this utility that we actually send out to people. What we've been doing is we've been renaming it as a text file because it is in fact a BAT file, a BAT file. What we do is when we send this to customers, we actually ask them to rename the file. But what I'm going to do is just open this up real quick. A colleague of mine that works with the company is Chris Dodge. He's basically come up and renamed a bunch of these utilities. And what this does is it actually will come in here and actually will start to close services down, and you'll start to see that he's closing some web services down here. What we're doing with this bat file is we're basically shutting down all the Autodesk services that are running at the time. And through some more uninstall process, we do go ahead and uninstall more programs. We're basically wiping the system clean of all the Autodesk information. Now, this is not your installed program files. These are the background licensing files that are installed. And if I go ahead and just kind of scroll down through this some more, and at the tail end of this, we actually come in and we start to install the licensing components. The tail end here too, where we're actually removing registry keys. But what this does is basically in about 5 minutes, we'll run through and clean up all of the old licensing information. Just close this back here. So this is the licensing components up here that Autodesk often sends out. It looks a little different. This is a time. These are two different ones. You can see one came out on March 25th. The other one came out 5 days later. So they're always trying to get these high licensing fixes out as fast as possible. If you don't have your desktop app turned on, and I don't mean to jump ahead, but if you don't have your desktop app turned on, you will not be notified of these. And if you could take a look at, there we go, let me just bring this up. This is Autodesk's technical doc on how to resolve this issue. So there's your error message, and you can see through the causes. I'm not going to click on every one of these links, but the license service is not updated. There's a conflict in your display adapter. We have a lot of finicky things happening with display drivers. So again, another good example to always check to see if you're up to date with drivers. Again, more information around license services not running, components is, again, if you click on each one of these links and go through each one of these, it's going to take you a substantial amount of time to kind of run through and get this sorted out. Knock on wood, if it does in fact sort it out. If you miss one simple little step in here, none of the bottom ones are really going to work. So again, we use a license utility, a bat file that kind of goes in and cleans up everything, and it actually gives us these results telling us that yes, it did install, and if you end up getting a result of 1 down here, it means that there was a permissions issue. We can work with you to get that sorted out. We have remote sessions to help there. So go ahead and move on to the next one. So with kind of moving it, shifting a little bit, the network version gets a little bit more tricky because there's a lot more communication. There's a lot more ways to go awry. I don't say wrong. It's just network licensing can be a little bit challenging. The most common things that we see are more of the license file itself. So when Autodesk sends you a license file, or we send you a license file, there is a timeout on that. Usually it is 1 year. So you call up on June 1st, you're going to have that license going to work all the way up till May 31st. The minute June 1st kicks around the next year, you're going to come on, it's going to say, nope, we're no longer valid. It's going to be an unpleasant situation. So one of the things we usually recommend is anybody who gets a license file to put in your calendar, a note saying that, hey, a week beforehand, I've got to contact M2, I've got to contact Autodesk and get a license file so I don't disrupt my users. The biggest thing with license codes, the issues, is you'll notice at the top of the 4 dialog boxes all basically spit out a different code. There are much more codes than up here. I just wanted to show some of the common ones. The 0.0.0, that is usually the network license manager, is out of date. So you've got a new license file, you go ahead and you configure it to your existing license manager, and none of the new licenses work. The biggest thing I can tell you there, whenever you get a new license file, you'll have to get a new version of the Flex LM. And again, I will show you how you can do that. Autodesk has a doc on that. Some of the other errors involve feature codes. What a feature code is, this gets a little bit more tricky. A feature code is a set of, basically a number or set of numbers and letters that are assigned to the product. The best way I can describe it is if you install Inventor, you would get, in the install GUI, you would get an option to install AutoCAD Mechanical. And in that AutoCAD Mechanical, you can actually run a flavor of just plain vanilla AutoCAD. All three of those pieces of software are tied to a specific feature code. So let's just say, for example, you install that version of Inventor and that feature code is 1A. And it's a much longer number than that, just for the sake of argument, let's call it 1A. And if you were to have another set of software, say you had access to AutoCAD Mechanical, it was just AutoCAD Mechanical. But again, it was a network seat of AutoCAD Mechanical. That actually would be a different feature code. And what happens is we run into problems where some people think they have a version installed, they have Mechanical installed, and they're not understanding why they can't grab a license, because the Mechanical that's running with the Inventor is not the one that's installed on the system. So again, I don't mean to start and go down a rabbit's hole, but it's one of those where you basically kind of really have to pay attention to your deployments and how you're installing them, who's got access to what deployment. And again, definitely you can consult with us. We'll definitely help you out with setting up things to make it easier for your staff. I just want to flip up this common FlexNet error code just so you can see how many different codes there are. You know, these are just the general ones that come in, but again, each one of these is a different issue. Sometimes what happens is the port communication is down, so we're going to have to go ahead and set up different ports. There are also other issues too that we get into. Some of these errors, the minus 132 is a timeout. What happens is you are basically sitting wherever. You have an office in New York, and maybe your server location is in New Jersey. And when you click on your license, you're not getting a license seat to come back to you. Well, there is a timeout that Autodesk looks for a certain number of milliseconds that it needs to connect to that server and then come back and get a basic communication. And if that doesn't happen, boom, the error pops up. So one of the things is there's a timeout variable. Sorry for jumping around here. My app to switch screens was not working, so I apologize for this. Okay, it's not letting me screen that out. So, well, you can see down here, I'm sorry about this, the flex timeout environment variable. You actually have in the environment variables for your system, you actually can set up an environment variable to tell it to increase that timeout. And again, there is a max setting down here that you can choose. And in some cases, I've had this work for customers. In other cases, I have not had successful trying to figure out why the max timeout wasn't working. In those cases, what we've done is we've talked to these customers and asked them about seeking a home use license. And what a home use license is, it allows you to basically work with Autodesk. They assign you a standalone serial number, and you're able to work on the software off your system without any communication to the Autodesk server or any communication to the network license manager. You're completely cut off from the network, I guess, if you want to put it that way. And they do offer that flexibility. And just to show you this, Autodesk does try to work with companies about working with VPN. They do have a best practices for VPN. We don't have the IT staff available to actually get in and figure out why the VPN issues are not working. They basically send this document to them. Hopefully it helps resolve it. And if it doesn't, we then look at going through the home use license. So one other just small note I want to talk to you about is the system variable that we do down here, which is the ADSK flex _ license file variable. And all this does is basically throughout potential situations that you may have had, if you had network licensing, you may move from server 1 to server 2 to server 3 to server 4 throughout the years, or what happens is the licensing information is written into the registry of the individual PCs, and it's possible that these registry information gets corrupted, or it's not finding the right server. And what this system variable does is allows you to actually go in, same approach as the other one I just mentioned. It goes into the system properties. We're able to enter the value of the variable, and then you could either set a port name, or you could actually put the host name or the IP address of the machine that hosts the network license manager. And that's a pretty popular one. Immediately tells the system, any Autodesk application that is launched, go to that server for the license manager. The other one, the other last dialog box over here on the right, it doesn't happen often, but basically through the install of the software, you can choose network or standalone options. In order to get to the network, you've got to go into what we call the utilities area or what, but in some cases, people mistakenly think they have network license, they install a network version, and it's really standalone, and when you fire it up, it has no idea where to go to find a license manager. It's just a license finder box pops up. Basically, you really can't do anything about this. You'd have to uninstall the version and reinstall it to get the standalone back on there. In the past, there were some brave people that went into the registry and tried to make some setting changes there to the licensing scheme, but in the past, you were able to do this, but now you're not. It would break the licensing. You'd be back to square one, where you'd have to do a clean uninstall and a reinstall for that. So the Flex License Manager tool utility, it's a rather, it can be intimidating at first. It's really not that hard to work with. Just wanted to give you some basic, ideas around what the main parts of the areas that we're looking for when we talk to you about getting information back. And basically really how just to set this up really quickly. So let me see, I think I had that one up, yep. So this is the license manager here. And what will happen is you'll have an X amount of seats, you'll get a license file generated. The license file generate needs two pieces of information. One would be the host name, and two would be the Ethernet address. Now, I've got two cards on mine, but you can see the first Ethernet address is here, the host name. These are the two pieces of information that Autodesk needs to generate the license file based on your seats. Once you get a license file, really what the next step is to come in to configure services. And the name's technically not important. You do obviously want a name that you can recognize, but the basic 5 pieces of information right here, you want to make sure you pathed out to the LMGRD, which this is a file that's already installed. That's going to the wrong directory, but it's already installed on the network license manager folder. The path to the license file, again, I've set it up to go into my local account. Again, it's just this would be the license file that Autodesk has sent you, and it's with an LIC. And then the most important one here is a lot of people don't realize this path usually comes in blank. So you definitely want to make sure you path out to a debug log file. If you do not have a debug log file set here, you are going to get licensing errors. It's kind of weird, but it doesn't actually warn you about saying, hey, you need to put one in here. But again, you do not. This is not sent by Autodesk. Basically, what you just do is you start a notepad file, call it debug.txt, and then just go ahead and rename the extension to LOG and browse to that, make sure that's picked up. And these three paths are filled out. Your start power up here, these are the services. If these are unchecked, your license manager will not be running. So we recommend to check these. And once you have this configured, it's a matter of coming over to the start, stop, reread. In this case, you would start the service. If you had a license file that was a change, maybe you added seats, maybe you decreased seats, whatever the case may be, you got a new license file. You basically start the whole process, but before doing anything, you come into the start, stop, reread. You actually would stop the server. I would go ahead and swap out the license files. You may have to rebrowse to the new license file, depending if it's a different name. It's the same name, well, you call one old, and vice versa. But make sure you get the right license file in here. You browse out to it. You come back in and you go ahead and start the server. So that should then go ahead and start the server. My service is running. One of the things about the server status tab here is you can, once everything is running and configuring, and you're going to get a message saying down here, server started successfully. You come over to the server status and you can perform a status inquiry. And what this does is it actually will validate and will read your license file. It's going to take mine a minute or so because being a reseller, we have all kinds of software that are to our access. But you can see when I start this, that it comes in, it's detecting your license server port, and it's detecting the license file. And you can see it right, going ahead, there's my license file it's detecting. One of the things is, this is the up-to-date FlexLM version 11.16.2. In some cases, I've come in, done screen shares, and people have older versions, but again, we're working with an older software on the case. But I always tell them, you do have an older license manager, you can definitely update and still run the licenses. But you can kind of see in here, and these are the feature codes that I was talking about. See all these numbers that are different? These are the feature codes. And you can see the licenses that we have available. I don't have any in use here because I'm not running Architectural Desktop, I'm not running AutoCAD, I'm not running MAP. But that's in general, that's basically the rundown of the license manager. It's a tool will ask if you're having licensing errors, we'll ask you to perform this status inquiry, and then you can kind of come in here with your cursor. You can kind of highlight all this information. Not that I'm going to sit there and highlight all of that, but then you can go ahead and copy this to the clipboard, paste it into a notepad file, and send it to us, as we'll be able to troubleshoot, look at error messages, why you're not connecting, so on and so forth. Again, the licensing information is really kind of critical, and to you common users, it's hard not to understand what's going on. Get us this information, we'll be happy to figure it out. The other things I just want to mention really quick is there is an options file that you can set that works with a license file. It allows you to basically reserve licenses for groups of people. So if you had 10 licenses and you said, you know what, I know that Johnny's always working in it, I'm going to reserve him his one, and I'm going to have 9 floating. So there's ways you can do things through option files. If there's, one other last thing here is that the last thing is if you did have some communication ports that you needed specifically, it's 27,000 through 27,009, I believe, is the ones that the license manager use. If you needed to go outside of that range, Autodesk does actually have a document here that shows you how you can actually communicate to a different exception, different port. So I am running a little bit behind time, so I apologize for that. There's a little bit on the licensing information for the network. That kind of get into another area that they asked me to think about talking about, and these are really not a lot of information around it, but a lot of people that I talk to don't understand about the Autodesk account. They don't understand about the desktop app. So I'd just like to take a minute and just kind of run through something. Your account, and this is based on subscription licensing. Let me rephrase that. It's not based on subscription licensing. Your account, you have access to your software, whether it's standalone, whether it's network, whether it's subscription-based. The software is going to be in this portal. But the other thing that's really important about this portal here is, let me go ahead and flip to that. So I'm here on my screen. I'm a standard user. There is elevated privileges, and I'll talk about that in a second, about a contract manager status. And it allows you to look at who's got assigned what, but I am a standard user. I'm not contract admin for M2, but in my home, it kind of basically just gives you an overall tour here, but on the left side, you have a contact support, and I'll get into that towards the last part of the slide. This is where you can actually contact Autodesk if you want. You can actually contact what we call their virtual agent. What's nice there, it gives you another area where you can download your products. But the big thing that I want to talk about here is in your product updates. This is where, and I'll take a second for mine to generate. This is where you're going to see all of your service packs and hot fixes. If you do not have your desktop app turned on, your desktop app is basically, I want to say, like a sister or a companion program to your Autodesk account. It's almost like a live feed. And as this populates, I am going to go ahead and show you my, okay, there we go. So you can see here that, again, I have a ton of software on here I don't even use. Alias, you could see these are the updates to the products, and these are the recent ones, and then you get the older ones. The older ones, now there's really only one product, at least that I've been working with, that you have to make sure you have access to the older updates, and that's the Vault. The Vault server version and the Vault client version cannot have mixed-matched updates. So when, say, Vault 2021 comes up with update 2, and somebody installs it on the server, if your client patches are not up to 2.2 also, you will have communication issues. So what happens is clients tend to run them back, and then they'll validate the patches as they come out. But again, it's more of a compatibility issue, and if you're looking for older updates, this is the only place you can come. Your desktop app, which is this funny little icon that, you know, whether it's installed, if it's not installed, you definitely can install it through your Meteor. But what this does is this is kind of a live feed. Some people have this turned off, but if you have it turned on, anytime there's a new release, a new update that comes out, it will actually, this product will search what you have installed, and then if I click on Life Inventor, I'm up to date. I was in here. Yep, see, like for 3ds Max, I have 2018 installed, but there's a .4 update here. Again, this is just really, just very convenient as far as being notified that there's an update. In some cases, I've seen where this has not been notifying people, and I end up getting a case with Autodesk to go through how to get that resolved. But if worse comes to worse and you don't find that this is communicating to you, you basically have the backup here through the My account. The other thing, just on the home, like I said, if you really wanted to go back, it offers you an option here to contact support. Now that is not us, that is Autodesk. maybe in some cases you want to talk to them about a modeling technique. By all means, we will give you our 2 cents on how we would approach it, but in some cases you may want to talk to some of their technicians, and it is a way you can come in here. This is one way you can log a support request. So let me go back here, and this is just real quick here, as I know we're going to kind of getting tight on time. This here is actually a screenshot of the contract manager's Autodesk account, and really what I want to show you that here is it gives you a user management section where it allows you to actually assign by the user, assign by product, and what that allows you to do is basically go in there and check off users. Say somebody leaves the company, you go in and you delete the user. Somebody comes into the company new, you add the user. Which access you want. You want to give them access to Fusion. I give this access to Inventor, and so on and so forth. And it also gives you reporting and contracts. You can actually look at the contracts when they're coming up, when they're due, seat usage, and the cloud usage services if you have any cloud service products. And really, the last couple of areas that I wanted to talk about was this Autodesk virtual agent. This virtual agent is basically been around for quite some time. I believe it was originally put together for the educational version, or the educational clients, and it's kind of morphed into pretty much anybody can get to it. They kind of open up the access to it. One of the nice things about this is Autodesk gives you access to the current version and 3 back. So 2021 is out now, so they give you access to 2020, 2019, and 2018. I have come across some cases where people were looking for older software, and I end up telling them to go to the Autodesk virtual agent, because in some cases there, you can actually choose to download your Autodesk products using this link, and you can type in a version. And I've had cases where I found the version I was looking for, whether it was 2016 or 2017, and I was able to download it. But again, this is a site that, eventually they are going to rip off those options to get to those older installs. Nothing worse than telling somebody that I can't help them get the software that they need, that they had on their system, that they have to upgrade to a new version. It is not fun, but anyhow, I will talk about this last one here, which is the Autodesk App Store. I don't know if anybody's actually gone out to this. I don't know if I have this open. Let's click on it. I would suggest having you all check this out, because it's kind of an interesting place where you can get really cool utilities. You can see over here on the product stores, you got AutoCAD, Revit, BIM, Inventor. I'm just going to click on Inventor, and if you come in here, you can kind of see, like, again, there's all kinds of things. If you draw stairs and all kinds of stuff. You can take a look what's out here, download, install it. The support for these are usually within this app. You'll actually see information to contact the support. This is stuff that is not basically licensed by Autodesk as far as their suite of products. And I think that was it. The last thing, and I apologize, I know I'm right about the time I wanted to stop. The last slide I really want to talk about is just the channels that you have available to you. By all means, we are here to help you. We are here to guide you and mentor you as best we can. In some cases, you may call us, you may get voicemail. It may take a little time for us to get back to you. But if that's the case, you have some options here. The Autodesk Knowledge Network, this is their basically their network of all the error messages, including training files, including help files. Everything is kind of wrapped up into one. If you Google error messages, more likely it will send you into our network. And again, there's a couple of options here to log a support case with Autodesk, and there's also an option to schedule a call. And again, you can just click on these links real quick. They're actually coming in off of the Autodesk Knowledge Network. But it actually just goes through anybody who has a valid subscription, a valid contract with Autodesk. You can actually schedule a call to talk to an Autodesk support technician. So with that said, the only other things really were left to go through is just, if you don't know about the discussion forum, this is another really nice tool. I usually send people out here if they have a modeling, they're trying to do something. Like I said, we'll give them our 2 cents of how to attack it. But what's nice about this is you've got a bunch of Autodesk design experts that are out there looking at this stuff. You've got Autodesk personnel, QA, and development people chiming in. So it's a nice resource to have. And again, there are several channels. You have customization channel, and if you are looking to basically promote some of your ideas into possibly new features, there is the ideas forum. And with that, I apologize, I went a little longer than I wanted to, but we'll go ahead and open up the floor to questions if you have any.
Folks, don't forget, if you have any questions, you can ask them in the questions control box or in the questions box in your control panel. So we'll open the floor for any questions you might have. And if we don't have any questions today, but you think of something after you hop off the webinar, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Sorry, Don, if you could just switch it to the next slide, please.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. But folks, if you have any questions after this webinar, please feel free to reach out to us. We're available anytime, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. It doesn't seem like we have any questions right now, so we'll end the webinar right here. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care and be safe. Thank you, Don.
Welcome. Thank you guys for attending. Everybody have a great weekend.